When you look at the camera, they think you're looking at them, and the source of credibility as a leader is in eye contact, according to my first boyfriend, Aristotle. To be able to connect with the people, to look at them in person, we know that's good. And then this camera thing, which is really hard for us, right? Because we're not used to it, most of us, but everyone out there thinks we're looking at them.
Thank you, Mo, for joining us. We really want to talk to you today about meetings and how to get the best out of them, because the death of meetings, or even just meetings falling flat, that's a key issue when we think about how we can work smarter. Problem one is, in fact, the kickoff. How can the leader of a meeting make it relevant and practical from the get-go?
Well, the first thing is to have an agenda. Think about what is the most important thing for the audience. Think about them, and then have not too many things, but announce from the very beginning what you're going to talk about, and then ask if the audience has anything if they want to add or comment on, to get them talking first, because then you'll get interaction.
But what if nobody participates? How do you energize a meeting that perhaps it's falling a little bit flat and people aren't engaged, or maybe you have participants that are multitasking?
First of all, cameras on. There's a really good skill we discovered during COVID. We call it threading. If I say, okay, are there any questions? Then I'll call a person's name, give context, and ask a question. So for example, I'll say, Esmeralda, the other day when we were talking about this one topic, you had an interesting aspect or characteristic. What would you like to add to the agenda? Name, context, question.
I think you're right there, making meetings positive so people actually have a good experience and enjoy the meetings and not making them feel embarrassed. Now, silence was one side of it. How do you bring it back to the agenda that you were talking about if someone goes on a tangent?
When they take a breath, because at some point they're going to have to. They're going to have to inhale. You know what, Jeremy? Interesting point. Pop, 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 and edit back what they said in a very short time. We're going to put that on hold for now, and we're going to go back to the agenda and pick up.
In terms of making a meeting actionable, how do you actually make sure that you get the desired outcome of a meeting and make sure that it leads to something?
That's the hardest part, because there's a lot of talk and no action. One of the things with this problem is have people agree on the action plan. Someone in the room is responsible for publishing it, and it's on the calendar to pick up. So we call that capping the meeting. The calendar, the action, and it's published with owners. And it seems to work.
What about capping the number of people in a meeting? So what is the optimum size of a meeting in order to make it effective, but also not leave members feeling alienated?
So as far as numbers go, if you want active participation, try to keep it around 20.
And also talking about the time of the meeting. So we call it the 30-minute trip here. So how do you make sure that you've set the right amount of time aside for the meeting? Should it be 30 minutes or should it be 15, or is that too little?
So people have been doing the hour thing, which is way too long. 30 minutes can work, as long as it's not the back-to-back-to-back-to-back-to-back-to-back meetings, because they never work. 45 seems to be the new time, because you can end early, give people time back, and that 15 minutes, usually between one meeting and the next, lets people run to the restroom or go put something on the stove for lunch.
And Mo, from a leader's perspective, you've got to check in with, your employees and the people who you manage. But how do you know if you're actually just scheduling too many meetings? What's the kind of optimum number per week?
Just know as a leader, you're either doing too many or not enough. Every 3 months, you have to shake it up. And this is where collective intelligence really does help, right? Because the people know an awful lot. So every 3 months, check in and either up the meetings or shorten the meetings, change the time of the meetings. It's the content, the connection, and the activity that's the most important. But people get bored. And let's face it, being a leader is like having a daycare center, and the kids get bored. You have to keep them engaged and interested.
Thank you so much, Mo Taylor, for joining us.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure.